question. What's the difference between Vice.com, Vice the show on HBO, and Vice Land, which was what I first learned about in 2003 or something?
Vice Land is a TV channel, which is what we just filmed it for. So it's not for the internet. It's for a cable station. Vice on HBO, I guess, is what they did before they had a TV station of their own, and now I think that they have their own TV station eventually. That HBO
they can dump Bill Maher because, if you could teach comedy. But anyway.
Well, we were talking beforehand about this sort of gimmick that people use where they have predictable punchlines, and Bill Maher always does that thing in his monologues where it's like, one is a ba-ba-ba-ba, the other's a black guy. You know, that, whatever that switch is, that is every
Are
single
you allowed
time.
to talk shit about Bill Maher at this point? Because I don't want to get you fired. We do have a buyer's remorse clause on this podcast where if you say something you shouldn't have, we'll take it up. Before
I have a tendency to make some people
I think Bill Maher is very quick. I think he's brilliant at what he does in his format. His stand-up is fucking awful, just like he took classes from the guy you showed me.
I like Bill Maher's program. I think it serves a good purpose in like political discourse, and he has people like Matt Taibbi and Jeremy Scahill, very great like
people I've never heard of, which is why I don't watch it.
But like really smart, like people that wouldn't otherwise be on TV at all with their politics. But his comedy, when the last writer's strike happened and he went back on the air with some kind of exemption without writers, he did New Rules, which he wrote himself. And oh my God, that was a sorry sight, I gotta say. Well, then now you're getting me off track again into the writer's strike, where you go, oh really? I remember the first one saying, or the last one, oh, really? We're not going to get Suddenly Susan anymore and Third Rock from the Sun, and I don't even know the local or updated references for that. But it's sad you could only be here for overnight. Yeah, we're flying to Nashville to do a segment about Christian comedians, the church circuit. So that's why we're.
That's going to be so much more fun.
I don't know. Like I'm a little bit intimidated that I'm going to be ambushed by like I'm going to be baptized or something against my will. I don't know. I don't know what to expect.
You won't laugh. I guarantee you. No matter what happens, you won't.
Who doesn't laugh at liars? I mean, come on.
Well, he explained this. You guys weren't in the room, but he explained for the segment this Christian comic who, the way you described her, is basically telling people why it's funny she had to ignore the church and why the church shit on her mental illness and suicidal tendencies.
She's still very much, I guess, a born-again type person, and she does strictly Christian venues, or it's at least marketed that way. Church-going people come to her gigs, but she talks about how she was suicidal well after she had found Jesus and was born again. And hypothetically, the theory is once that happens, you're happy and you're full of joy. But she was suicidal. So she talks about that in her stand-up act.
And how
she called her kids
faith shit on it.
Yeah, she called her kids into her room and was going to tell her small children, Mommy's not going to be around anymore. You'll be better off without me. So that alone was controversial for this Christian audience.
Now pray before you go to bed.
Yeah. And then,
I find that hilarious. I don't know if the rest of you think it's funny, but I think it's fucking
Duplicity
hilarious.
is great. That's awesome.
I know, but the interesting point Doug makes is that she plays the same role for her constituency as he plays for his, which is to make them laugh at something that's deadly serious, you know. So.
Well, playing to the demographic is like, political comedians are very guilty of that. A left-wing political comedian has a left-wing political
relish
audience,
in it.
right?
It took me decades to get to a place where I could not have to worry about, oh, he said this word and this subject is not funny. Well, to my audience, it is. The only thing I can think of that would queer my audience away is going sober or becoming born again. Two things that we're talking about right now. So let's get back to you and your book, because we've covered this shit for your thing. You wrote this book. You did stand-up, you said, from 98 to 2006.
Correct, yeah.
And what queered you out of it other than them not showing up?
I lived in Vancouver. It literally was people not showing up because I lived in Vancouver, which is a smaller market. I'm Canadian. At the time, I could not legally perform in New York or Los Angeles. It wasn't an option for me. So if you're in a smaller market in America and you want to take the next step up, you move, And
I am so bum rushing every question I have for you because you only have a limited amount of time.
That's all right.
Vancouver, Canada comedy scene is so much more controlled by the powers that be, not networks, but the actual club owners and the courts, where that kid in Vancouver, no one came to his defense because he wasn't funny, but he made a landmark lawsuit where some lesbian couple was heckling him, and he called them dykes, and they sued him for like 25 grand, I think.
Yeah,
they won.
yeah, that was after my time. I wasn't there at the time, but I, of course, heard all about it. But again, we were talking off mic about comedy teachers, and you're like, that's the guy teaching a comedy class? Same with these things, with these court trials in Canada. The comedians who are getting persecuted, if you will, you're like, that guy? He's been doing stand-up for 2 weeks. Of course the audience hates his guts, you know? He's horrible.
The same as comedy teachers. That guy's teaching a comedy class.
So,
He sucks shit.
So apparently that's sort of what happened in Vancouver, and it puts a comedian in a weird position because you want to defend the comedian, yet at the same time it's a guy who's been doing stand-up for 2 weeks who isn't really
I'll bring it local. There was a guy locally that's just a rummy in town where they have haunted Bisbee ghost tours. And it's a scam. Every small town that has nothing else to really...
It's a franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just say it's haunted, and that'll bring people.
Right.
Well, this old rummy was tired of it, came out of the Bisbee Grand during a ghost tour and mooned them. Well, there was children in the group, and they were going to charge him as a sexual predator, a sex offender, because they saw his asshole and hopefully part of his turkey neck, the best part of the moon. And no one rushed to his defense in a very liberal town because he's a drunken asshole. Like, you still got to defend your point of view, but still.
Somebody told me, is this true that if the cops bust you for taking a leak, like in a back alley, and they arrest you, that you'll be on a sex offender's list?
That is totally true, because that happened to me. Almost.
Is that your excuse?
The cop let us off. We were peeing. We went up onto this like ridge, like looking for a party in Orange County, and then the cop pulled up, and like 6 of us were all peeing on a fence, and there were girls in cars near us, and he laid it out. He goes, "This, you would be actually charged as a sexual predator. You would have to be registered and it's like, what the fuck?"
So insane. And nobody comes to the defense, of course, of a sex predator, but the definition is so broad that...
I have the same thing as a guy fucking a corpse. I don't know. It's fucking weird.
But when you come back to comedy, still so far, no one's been prosecuted for a joke on stage. Unlike Canada, unlike the UK, where we saw people getting arrested for mean tweets.
Well, I have a section in my book from the 1940s and 50s that talks about guys that were arrested for their act prior to Lenny Bruce. Lenny Bruce was, of course, persecuted mostly because he was talking about religion, and they used language as the auspices to throw him in jail.
Television, too.
Well, TV was so squeaky clean that certain words would have you banned for life. So there was all that censorship, but... In the 40s, there were guys that would use very innocuous material. God forbid they said fuck on stage. Literally, they would be arrested for obscenity was usually the charge and be thrown in jail for up to 6 months. And I have examples in my book about all these comedians who served jail time for the subject matter of their act. There was a guy in Anaheim in like 1959, very obscure, named Hoppy Hopkins. That's how he billed himself. He went on stage, and I don't know what the material was because in the news reports at the time, they didn't quote if a comedian swore on stage. But he did some routine that offended an audience member. An audience member performed a citizen's arrest, dragged him off stage. They phoned the police and held him, the comedian, till they showed up. The police showed up, handcuffed him, charged him. He went to court and lost an obscenity case because of this citizen's arrest. The judge said that club owners would be wise to demand a transcript in advance of any comedian's performance. So, and usually the club owner would get charged too for staging an obscene performance. So it doesn't seem to happen now like it does in Canada with those kind of court trials. But once upon a time,
happened again. Was it Matt Ward? I think it was.
Again, like I'm not in Canada anymore, so I just hear about it. But they're guys that I don't know.
I might be saying the wrong name. There was another comedian.
Matt Ward used to be the comedian we worked with out of Tennessee.
All right, I got the name wrong, but there was a comic since then that got busted for and lost a case, a civil case.
The problem is the cases are debated by people, of course, who have no knowledge of comedy, no knowledge of stand-up, just like this judge in the 40s who said I'd demand a transcript. So you're already kind of in a losing battle because people just don't understand what the fuck it is you're doing. It's different than if you're on the bus and you're berating a guy, and being just an obnoxious dick. You know, so, but again, it's hard to defend some of these guys because they're guys I've never heard of. To my knowledge, aren't like, in my pompous way, wouldn't call a true stand-up, a guy who's been doing stand-up for a few weeks. So it's like, yes, I am against his persecution, but at the same time, I don't like seeing him on CNN saying, we comedians. I'm like, well, what? This guy's the spokesman for stand-up now?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's difficult, but you do have to err on the side of us.
Yeah.
So I feel the same way. I don't watch this whole fucking political shit, but where I see even comedians that are saying, well, he did this. Well, if it was Obama that did that in the first 100 days or whatever, it wouldn't be an issue. You're trying to find a flaw because you hate the guy. And you're right to hate the guy. I did this with George Bush. Well, he got a DUI. Well, if your friend got a DUI, you'd go, well, it doesn't matter. He's still a great dude. So stop pointing out the thing just... You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, America is odd that way. I'm sure it's the same in every country. But you choose a side, and no matter what wrong thing your side does, you defend it. And no matter what wrong thing that other side does, you attack it, even if it's the same
caused
thing.
by sports.
Yeah, it's just bizarre.
It's caused by sports. If the Cowboys are your team, you'll go, he used steroids, but you'll ignore your guy that's doing steroids.
Right, exactly.
And it's human nature to be a piece of shit as an animal. And if you rise above that level, then you're alone. So yeah, which way do you want to go? I've been watching sports since before you got here.